All right, welcome to the second part of our first-person narrative project setup video series. In this section, I'm going to cover creating a new Unity project. We'll go ahead and make sure that our Visual Studio is working correctly with it. And then we will add the GitHub for Unity plugin, and we will create a repository with that and publish our repository to GitHub. So let's get started making our new project. So here's our Unity hub. If you ever need to find it, I normally just hit the start menu and type in hub, and there it is. It also sometimes exists as a tray icon in your system tray down here. Um, so anyway, once you have it open, I'm going to click on projects, and I'm going to click on new, and I'm going to call this first. Well, let's do this. Advanced Game Engine Scripting, First Person Narrative Demo. How about that? And make sure you're on the 2018.3.1 Unity version that we just installed. You're going to make sure that you're using the 3D template. Pay attention to where you save it, but that's up to you. And then just go ahead and hit Create Project. So here's Unity open for me, and right off the bat it says Unity Editor Update Check. There is a new version of Unity available for download, blah, 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 blah. Well, remember, we aren't able to just upgrade whenever we want at school, and we're going to get a variety of conflicts if we are using a more recent version at home than what we have at school. So I'm going to make sure that I always just skip this. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and check for updates so I don't accidentally click it later. So go ahead and skip the new version. If you want to download the new version and just play with stuff on your own, that's cool. But just make sure you're always working on your school projects with 2018.3.1. So we will skip the new version. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is just double check that our Visual Studio setup is working. So I'm going to go to the project window here. I'm going to make a new folder for my scripts. So we always want to keep our project organized based on the category of asset. So we will make a folder for scripts. We'll go into this, right click, use the create menu, and go ahead and create a new C# script. And go ahead and just leave the default name. This is just going to be something temporary that we don't use, but I want to then double click it and just open Visual Studio and make sure IntelliSense is working, etc. Alright, so here's Visual Studio. It opened right up for me. A couple ways to decide right away if it's working. First of all, you'll notice it will recognize the class MonoBehavior as a class. It'll recognize start as a special function. See how it's in this darker color blue? If I were to just make my own function, like void my function, this one is not in that dark blue, so I can already tell it's working. But if you really want to keep testing, we can say something like game object to see if it's there. That little auto-complete stuff, that's called IntelliSense, and that is what we want to make sure is working with Unity. Another good test would be to see something like start typing on trigger enter, not inside of any other function. It should be in your class, but not in a function. And if you see the huge list of things that start with on trigger, you know everything's working right. So this is cool. I'm in good shape. If it's not working for you, you can go back and look at the first video where I showed some troubleshooting steps involving the uninstalling and reinstalling the Unity workload in Visual Studio installer. Alright, so I'm just going to close this. We don't need this. Alright, so The next thing I'm gonna do, I guess I'll go ahead and delete this script too because I don't want that. Alright, so the next thing I'm gonna do is go ahead and go to the asset store. So here's the asset store. If you don't have that window sitting there, you can find it in the window menu here, window asset store. Oops, I clicked a thing. And this is the asset store. If you're not logged in, you're going to need to create an account and log in. If you already have an account, just go ahead and log in. And the asset I'm going to be looking for is the Unity, let's see, GitHub for Unity. There it is. And this is kind of new and not always, it doesn't always work great, but it does a couple things automatically that I think are useful. So specifically, it will automatically set up your ignore list for a Unity project, and it will even better automatically set up something called Git LFS, which stands for Large File System, I think. And LFS is just going to be essential now that we're working in a 3D project because it will essentially allow you to store large files with a separate system as opposed to just uploading them on Git. But all of this magic is kind of handled transparently for you, so you'll just keep making commits just like normal. But under the hood, it's doing things a little different, and just basically, long story short, it makes dealing with large files much quicker and easier. So anyway, that's why we're gonna start our repository with this. Whether or not we keep using it kind of depends on if it works, which it has a limited feature set, and sometimes it just breaks. But we're gonna start with it. Now, actually, I was gonna import this through the asset store here, but the more I think about it, I actually think it's better to just go to their website and download it because sometimes there's newer versions than are in the asset store. So I'm gonna go to GitHub for Unity, just search that and click it right here. And I'm just going to download this because, like I said, sometimes this one is newer than this one. And this is going to be just a .unity package file. And if everything is working easily for you, if you already have Unity open and there's a project open, like we have a project open here, all I have to do is click my .unity package file and it'll automatically try to import it into my currently open project. If that were to not work out for you for some reason, you can always go to Assets, Import Package, Custom Package, and then just navigate to wherever you downloaded this file. Alright, so anyway, I'm gonna just make sure everything is selected here. You can hit all if you accidentally uncheck some stuff and you forgot what you unchecked. Just hit all to make sure you're getting all of it and hit import, and it will automatically import these files into your project. So here, check this out. It's actually telling me there's a new version as soon as I finished. And like I said, since this is such a young application or a young feature, I think it's going to be a good idea to just always download the new version of this GitHub for Unity whenever it says there is one, because who knows, maybe they'll fix the problem that I've been encountering. So anyway, even though I just tried to download the latest and greatest, let's just go ahead and say download the new version. And it took me to this website and downloaded a slightly different version. So let's go ahead and import that, and you're going to see it's going to just only change the ones that are updated here. So that's fine. Just you don't have to click anything, just hit import and it will do whatever it needs to do. Alright, I think it's done importing. You'll notice in your project window there's now this plugins folder, and then inside of that is GitHub. So if you see that, you can kind of know it worked. The next thing you need to do is go to the window menu and then choose GitHub. Now this, I guess by default, will open over here. Maybe if you don't see it, it could open on like a second monitor somewhere weird. Just look for this. It should open once you click that. It's in Window, GitHub. And we'll just hope that this works. Like I said, sometimes it's a little weird. So I'm already logged in. I'm going to go ahead and log out just so we can go through that process. So I'm going to choose sign out. And the first thing I guess I need to do is just maybe sign in. And so when I click that, it says authenticate sign in to GitHub. So just use your GitHub credentials and go ahead and log in. You don't want to do GitHub Enterprise, do GitHub. So you should have a GitHub account. This is where you put your login info. And hit sign in. And so I have the two-factor authentication on just because I needed it for work. And so I got to go ahead and do that. I think I typed that right. We will find out. Okay, cool. So now I see my username here in the top right corner. So I'm assuming that that worked. Next, I guess I can go ahead and look at these settings. So I think it will automatically fill this in for you once you've logged in. But you just want to make sure that you have the name and email that you want. And it's useful, if you use your actual GitHub info here, it'll look nice and link to your account on the GitHub website, which is kind of good for showing your work and taking credit for your work. So it's kind of good to make sure this is set up right. I'm just gonna leave it all. I think it just kind of automatically sets it up on its own. So let's just hope it works. If something doesn't work for you, we can try to figure it out in class. All right, anyhow, go back to this Initialize tab, and we will go ahead and click this Initialize a Git repository for this project button right here. And this seems to be working. I'm happy. Look, it even made a commit automatically for me here. I'm going to look at the changes, and I see actually there are 74 changed files. Essentially, these changed files are adding all of the GitHub plugin stuff. So I'm just going to go ahead and commit all that too, so that I have this GitHub for Unity stuff committed. So I'm going to just choose all, and I'm going to give my commit a message. So I'll just say add GitHub for Unity plugin. We'll hit commit. And I guess since that was a lot of files, it just took a minute. It seems to have worked. Now, here's where you might think, okay, it's time to push, but you'll notice it says there's no remote configured. So this repository, there is a repository. I can see my commits here, but it's not connected to a remote on the internet. So we want to actually publish this to GitHub. So we're going to choose this publish button and see what that does. So it says publish to GitHub, select a user. I want to just use my regular user account here. I need to give my repository a name. I'm going to name it similarly to how I named my project. So that was just, well, you can't have spaces in GitHub repositories or capitals. So we'll just make this Aegis FPN demo. That looks good. I can give it a description, why not? That's good for now. You can always change it. I'm going to leave mine public. I recommend you do too. It used to be you had to pay for public, or I'm sorry, you used to have to pay for private repositories. That's actually not necessarily the case anymore as of lately, but nonetheless, I am going to leave mine public just because it's easier to show off my work this way and collaborate. So I will go ahead and then just hit publish. And down here I can see it's doing some stuff. And I think it worked. So I wonder if there's a way to view my repository online from this interface. If nothing else, I guess I can do this. I'll click Go to Profile, which presumably will take me to my GitHub profile in a web browser. I'll go ahead and look at repositories. Okay. And then here it is. I see it. The most lately repository that I've made is right here, Aegis. Uh, oh, I didn't name it the way I would have liked. I meant to call it first person narrative demo. Oh well, I guess I can fix it. And here's all of my stuff. I can go into my assets and see, sure enough, all that stuff that I committed has been pushed to this incorrectly named repository. Alright, I'll look into how to fix this and see if it messes up Unity and everything else. We'll find out. So I'm just going to go to settings and I'm going to try changing the repository name. This is only necessary because I screwed up naming it. So this is the first person narrative demo. And hopefully this doesn't totally screw up my GitHub for Unity plugin. I wonder if it will. So I think what I'm going to have to do to fix this is go over here to the settings and update the origin address here to match the new name. So it's first person narrative, save repository. I notice a little login prompt came up on my other monitor. Let's go ahead and do it. Oh, it's asking me to do two-factor authentication again. Alright, well, I'm just going to assume that it worked, but we'll find out. Alright, well, I think it actually worked, but let's go ahead and make a test just to go through the process of committing and pushing here. So I'll go ahead and I'm just going to go to my assets directory, right click, and I'm just going to create something as a test that's lightweight and easy to get rid of. So I'll make this square sprite here and just leave it named square. If I look at my changes here, I can see now there's a meta file and a square.png. The meta files just help Unity keep track of things, so you always want to make sure you commit them. So we'll go ahead and just select here to select everything under assets. I'm just going to say test commit for demo. I will commit to master here. And now I will go ahead and push. And so if this works, it says pushing. I'll get a little dialog that says branch pushed. And then again, I can go back to the GitHub website and look at the commits. And here's some more commits. You can see I was testing to see if the rename worked, and it did. Anyway, here's the one I just did 26 seconds ago. I can see that I created the square, and there it is. I don't want that file there, so I'm going to delete it. So I'll go back over here. I'm going to delete this square. I'm going to make sure I'm on the Changes tab of my GitHub window, and I'm going to just say removing test file from demo, or for demo. We'll go ahead and make sure we select the change that we want to commit here. Commit to master, push, and we should be back to an empty project that just has our GitHub for Unity plugin. Now, to overview some stuff that happened here, the reason, like I mentioned, the reason I like the GitHub for Unity plugin, as you can see, it has set up a git ignore for us automatically that will automatically ignore stuff that is useful for a Unity project. So your library is gone, nothing, you don't want your builds in there, the temp, etc. All of the Visual Studio stuff that you don't need in a Unity project is ignored by default here. Basically all the generated files are ignored. And in addition to that, we can see we also have Git LFS set up, and all of the kinds of files that are kind of heavier weight. So things like sound assets, image assets, videos especially. Here's all of your model formats, etc. All of this stuff, if we were to commit any of these types of files, it will work just seamlessly like you're used to with Git, but it'll sort of secretly save it a little bit differently so that it's much faster and you don't have to re-download them every time you are fetching or updating. It just makes life a lot easier. Alright, so I think that pretty much covers the things I wanted to go through on this video. We have one more left in this little mini series, and I'm going to show us, I'm going to go over installing some asset packages that will be useful for our first person game.